You're listening to the Play Therapy Parenting Podcast with Dr. Brenna Hicks.
Hi, I'm Dr. Brenna Hicks, the Kid Counselor. This is the Play Therapy Parenting Podcast, where I give you insight, awareness, and enlightenment about your parenting and your relationship with your kids. In today's episode, I am answering a question from Kendall, and this question is about how to set expectations when you can't prepare for what's about to happen regarding limits that might need to be set. So Kendall, a huge thank you. This is a really helpful question, and it's something that I've touched on here and there, but never done a specific episode on it in its entirety. So I'm really excited about this, and thank you for emailing in. If you have a question that you'd like me to answer, if you'd like to say hello, if you'd like to share a story, if you'd like to share a struggle, whatever it is, I would love to hear from you. Brenna at thekidcounselor.com. That's 2 N's, so BRENNA at thekidcounselor.com, singular kid without an S. And if you are maybe new to the podcast and maybe you have not listened to season 1 or you're newly into season 2, this podcast is designed to support you in your parenting from a child-centered play therapy approach. Many of you have your children in play therapy, and many of you have had play therapists recommend this podcast to you, and many of you are just working to educate yourself and be the best parents that you can be. Grandparents, caregivers, someone who loves kids. So really glad you're here. Thanks for being a part of the Play Therapy Parenting Podcast family. And this is a really special group of people that truly love kids and truly want to be at their best. So Kendall, I appreciate your email, and any of the rest of you, I would love to hear from you. So let me read parts of the email and then we'll dive into this. Our child's play therapist recommended your podcast and techniques, and we've already seen a meaningful shift in our big feeling 7-year-old. Episodes 10, 11, and 12 of season 2 have been especially helpful. Kendall, I'm so glad to hear that. One area we're struggling with is how to respond when we haven't had a chance to set a limit in advance, when the behavior seems to come out of nowhere. For example, if his brother walks by after a frustrating moment, our child might suddenly hit him, quote, for no reason. We typically respond with a consequence like, you can't play with your brother right now and you need to go to your room. This often leads to an epic meltdown with sobbing and screaming that it wasn't his fault, he was just frustrated. We're unsure how to turn this situation into a moment for choices. We try saying, you're frustrated, you're never allowed to hit. But how do we follow up with clear choices and natural consequences in line with the ACT model? If you're not familiar with ACT model, that is the 3-step process of limit setting. So we acknowledge the child's feeling, we communicate the limit, and we target alternatives for the behavior so that the need can still be met. So if that is completely foreign to you, and it sounds like I'm speaking a different language, first, I am. The child-centered approach is very much a different language. And so if you feel like this is gobbledygook at times, it is essentially the equivalent of learning to speak a different language. You have to learn the concepts, master the phrase, master the words, and change the way that you speak, just like it would be if you were learning German or French or Spanish or whatever. So yes, very much so. This sounds like a different language because it is. It is the language of child-centered play therapy. If ACT just is something you've never heard of before, that likely means you've not listened to earlier episodes. So please go back and do that, especially starting in season 2. I kind of walk you through the seminal training, meaning the very basic and foundational concepts of child-centered play therapy in a parenting approach. And season 1 has all kinds of things if you'd like to go back there as well. But season 2 was a little bit more of a teaching type of season. So if you're unfamiliar with ACT, I would highly recommend going back. Okay, Kendall. So I think it's really important to raise this question because often we try to set limits and we want to be proactive. So if we know that a child is going to struggle with bedtime, if we know a child is going to struggle with eating dinner, if we know that a child is going to struggle with getting on the bus on time, those are limits that we can set proactively to set everyone up for success. That is a very powerful tool in your parenting toolbox because if you recognize there's a pattern of behavior, you're able to tackle it preemptively and proactively. So that is a helpful scenario. I think I also need to acknowledge, however, that limits are only needed when they're needed. So we can proactively set an expectation of behavior and provide limits ahead of time because we know this is a pattern. But when we don't know that something is coming, then we are going to tackle it in the moment because limits are only needed when they're needed. So there's an interesting balance to be struck where, yes, sometimes we proactively address things and then sometimes we just wait until we need to set a limit. And in this scenario, I think it's a little bit of both. So I'm going to walk you through both sides of this so that you can kind of see what this approach would look like. First and foremost, the limit that would be set ahead of time, because proactively we know that this is something that needs to be addressed. You said that you have a big feeling 7-year-old, and then you said another brother. I don't know if you only have 2 children or maybe more, but I'm going to go with the 2-child model because you only mentioned 2 in the email. So in that scenario, you're going to say to both of your boys, in our family, we take care of each other and we're kind to each other and we never hurt each other. Notice that is proactively establishing expectation. The key to this being effective is doing it at a neutral time. So this has to be said ahead of time, preemptively, when no one is tired, when no one is hungry, when no one is bored, when there's no emotional charge, when nothing has just happened that was contentious between the two of them. It's a very neutral, factual declaration. In our family, we treat each other with kindness, we treat each other with love, and we never hurt each other. Okay, so you have to repeat that several times to make it very known to the boys that is the expectation. That would be the only proactive setting a limit of sorts ahead of time. What you've really done is set an expectation of behavior because the limit isn't needed until it's needed. So now the boys know that the other one is never for hurting. Then at that point, if at any moment your 7-year-old walks by his brother, gets frustrated and hits him, now you fall back on the expectation that has already been set, wherein you say, I'm going to make up a name. Jake, you chose to hit your brother and your brother is never for hitting. All right, so now we've acknowledged the behavior and we've reinforced the expectation that has already been established. You can add in the why. So it's sometimes helpful for a child to hear the why behind the limit. So you chose to hit your brother, but your brother is never for hitting because no one in this family is for hurting. If you want to go broader, you can say people are never for hurting. But I think it's probably a little bit more impactful if we keep it isolated to the family, since we've already said in our family, we are always kind, we're always loving, and we never hurt each other. So you're going to fall back on what's already been established. So now behavior came up, quote, out of the blue for no reason, and we immediately acknowledge what has happened. Jake, you chose to hit your brother, and your brother is never for hitting because your family members are never for hurting. All right, so now that's the A and the C of the limit. Now we're moving into consequences. So this pattern has already been established of expectation. He violated the expectation. So I'm going to tweak the wording of what you said you would typically say. So you said you would regularly say, you cannot play with your brother right now and you need to go to your room. That is consequence, but it is you in charge and it is you dictating the outcome. And the tweak of that is that it becomes very clear that he made a choice. So we're going to tweak the language here. So after we say, Jake, you chose to hit your brother and your brother is never for hitting. You chose to hit him, therefore you choose to go to your room for 10 minutes. Next time, if you choose not to hit him when you get upset, you choose not to go to your room for 10 minutes and you choose to stay down here with the rest of the family. Notice now you've made it really clear that there is a choice to always be made, but in this moment, the choice has already been made. You knew that your brother wasn't for hurting. You chose to hit him anyway. So because you chose to hit your brother, you choose to go to your room for 10 minutes. But that's the negative choice, negative outcome. You also want to present the positive choice. Y'all, this is important. We're very quick to focus on the negative, but choice giving, and especially ultimate choice giving, which is when we do the if-thens. By the way, if you've never heard of the regular choice giving versus ultimate choice giving, again, please go back and listen to earlier episodes so you can get caught up. When we move into ultimate choice giving, it's very important to recognize that the positive and the negative are both presented every single time. If you choose not to hit your brother, you choose to stay down and be with the family and not go to your room. But if you choose to hit your brother, you choose to go to your room by yourself. Now it's very clear that Jake, in my scenario, I'm air quoting Jake, has a choice to make. Now, in the scenario where he already hit his brother, he already chose the outcome, but next time he can choose a different one. And when he says, I was just frustrated and it wasn't my fault, and there's an epic meltdown with sobbing, there's several things going on. First of all, he feels guilty and ashamed. Second of all, his emotions have de-escalated again and his brain kicked back in. In the moment, his brain was taking a nap because emotions are always going to override the cognitive. Kids are not rational. Kids are not cognitive. They're not thinking their way through things. They're feeling their way through things. He felt upset, so he behaviorally reacted. It's an experience, it's an emotion, and it's a behavior, and they're all tied together. He didn't think at all. This is why when we say, what were you thinking? Why did you do that? What made you think that was a good idea? And they say, I don't know. It's true. He did not know why he hit his brother. He reacted because of an experience, an emotion, and a behavior. But as those emotions de-escalate and they come back down, brain comes back in and brain says, you shouldn't have hit your brother. You shouldn't have done that. Now you're in trouble. That wasn't a helpful decision. What in the world? Okay, the brain is now thinking again. So he feels remorse. He feels guilt. He feels shame. He probably is mad at himself. He's mad that he's up in his room alone. And so he's saying, it wasn't my fault. I was just frustrated. Well, the antidote to that is building an emotional vocabulary for him. So every time he expresses an emotion, Kendall, reflect it to him. You're excited. You're proud. You're glad that happened. You're irritated. You're angry. You're annoyed. You're disappointed. Every time he expresses an emotion, reflect it to him. Why? Because eventually what happens is he's going to be able to recognize, I feel frustrated right now, and I'm able to communicate my frustration verbally rather than emotionally and behaviorally. Right now, he is in fact showing his brother what he's feeling. He's just not identifying it and communicating it. He's hitting. That's his way of expressing frustration. So when he's sobbing and he's having a meltdown saying, it wasn't my fault, I was just frustrated, those are true statements for him. It wasn't really his fault. He didn't have much control over it. Until a child builds regulation, until a child builds emotional vocabulary, they don't really have a lot of ability to control their behavior. This is adulthood bias kicking in. We have far too high of expectations on a child's ability to think before they do things. They're not capable of it. Developmentally, age appropriately, they are not able to reason. They cannot think their way through a scenario. So he gets mad, he hits. Natural, appropriate response. But as he builds emotional vocabulary, as he builds regulation, as he learns to comply with limits, he will naturally do that less and less. And so that's why in conjunction, we're going to set limits with the positive and the negative. Jake, if you choose to hit your brother, you choose to go to your room by yourself. If you choose not to hit your brother, you choose to stay down here with the rest of us. Which do you choose? All right, that's very clear. It's also very important that he has an emotional vocabulary because he needs an alternative. He needs to be able to say, stop, Jared, you're frustrating me. That is a very different response than hitting because he's charged. So Kendall, I hope that is helpful. I hope that that gives you a little bit of insight into how to handle that. And the ACT model is designed in such a way that children learn very quickly. If it is consistently used, they learn very quickly. Mom and dad get it. That's what the A is, the validation. Mom and dad get it. There's a neutral limit. And I have choices. And there are consequences tied to the choice, but I have control over this. So I'm going to choose the outcome that favors me the most. He doesn't want to be in his room. So he will naturally learn to choose to not hit his brother so that he can choose to stay down with the rest of the family. That's the natural outcome of the ACT limit setting model. So Kendall, thank you so much for the question. I hope that that helps you. I hope that that helps everyone else as well. It is a struggle to know how to address surprising behaviors, and kids are full of them. So just when you get a handle on one, there'll be a new one that pops up, and we're always playing catch up. So thank you to each of you for committing to be there for your children, committing to support your play therapists with whom you're working if you have your children in therapy. And thank you for investing in your relationship and wanting to be the most effective parent that you can be. These are the decisions that you're making every single day that have a lifelong effect, long-term impact. As your children grow up and become parents themselves, there is a cycle and pattern of behavior that's established, and every choice that you make right now influences that long-term. So I hope that that encourages you and helps you feel supported and loved, because you are. We'll talk again soon. Bye.
Thank you for listening to the Play Therapy Parenting Podcast with Dr. Brenna Hicks. For more episodes and to subscribe to our newsletter, please go to www.playtherapyparenting.com.